First question from David in Honolulu. And David, how did you come up with such a perfect question for the first question for our question and answers, our Q&A session? Here it goes. You want to read it?
What is revolutionary social work?
What is revolutionary social work? You mean you don't know already? No, it's a really good question, and it it has an in-depth answer, which we won't get to everything today. But the one thing I want to emphasize about revolutionary social work is that revolutionary social work and revolutionary social workers, we want to change the world. We want to make the world a better place. We want to take down oppressive, destructive systems, just like what you might say in critical social work or radical social work, or even decolonizing social work, any of those. The one thing, and there's more than one, but the one main thing that distinguishes revolutionary social work from all these others is that in order for, you say, societal or systemic change, a prerequisite is personal evolution and personal transformation. It means that in order to change things outward, meaning the systems, society, then we first have to look inward and change ourselves. So personal change, personal transformation is a prerequisite for external change. That would be the number one thing that epitomizes revolutionary social work. And I think one of the good ways for us to go through some of the nuances, don't you think, is that revolutionary social work doesn't operate by rules or principles. It operates with a values-based system. And so maybe we have a list of values, and maybe we ought to just talk about some of the values in revolutionary social work, right?
Yeah.
Some of our core values, and that could let you know, or give you a little bit more insight into what it is and what revolutionary social work is and what revolutionary social workers believe. With that being said, it's a malleable, meaning that it's an continuously evolving and changing definition and value system. We know that we're not perfect, and we know that we don't have it spot on, and we know that we need to, in order for it to be truly revolutionary, right, it has to continue to revolve and change. I don't know, you want to start us off with the values, Alicia?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on the first one, personal transformation. That's a huge thing. We just don't believe that you can have that, external impact or change without having that personal internal transformation and revolutionizing yourself. So we've talked about that a lot. That's a big value. We have dialogue on there, right? Dialogic practices.
Yeah, I can touch on that one a little bit. Dialogic practice is essentially, the root there is dialogue, right? And so dialogic practices means that we use dialogue and conversations to learn about each other, to grow closer together. I think we might mention it later, but it's kind of like this idea of, you can go to a dialogue or a talking circle, for example, and it could be your story. I go there and you have your story and I have my story. But if dialogue or a dialogic talking circle is done correctly, it shouldn't be your story and my story anymore, but it should be our story. So it brings us together. We emphasize dialogue, and that would go in education too, right? In the traditional educational setting, right? You go in and it'd be a transaction, like the banking model of education. You go in there, the teacher deliver a lecture, give you all the information you need, and give you a test on it, and yada, yada. I'm sure we've all done that to some extent. Even in social work, they have the exams and stuff. We don't believe in all that. We believe in dialogic education, meaning that if we were facilitating a class, whether that's for kids or whether it's for a master's degree, then we would hold dialogic talking circles where everyone would be a teacher, everyone would be a student, people would wear many hats, we would listen to each other, we would experience transformative change through dialoguing together. You have anything you want to add to that?
No, and I think just having spaces, I mean, whenever we've been in spaces where we can just share dialogue with each other, and it is like that, like everyone is a teacher. But same in the therapy room, I think with revolutionary social work and bringing it there, it is that dialogic practice. It's not the therapist is then just informing the client. That's not where revolutionary social worker is about, or where we're at. It is having that collaboration and that dialogue between each other and learning from each other and building that connection and that kinship, which I think is the next one. You want to touch on that too?
Yeah, we'll touch on it briefly. I did see there's a question down there, so we might want to save a little bit of it for that. But revolutionary social work values kinship and shared humanity. Oftentimes in today's political discourse and in the discourse of the world, we can't get away from the race-based discourse. And we want to get away from that. And we don't want to focus on race. We want to focus on our common shared humanity and focus on kinship, meaning coming together, forging connections. The next one is peace and violence.
Yeah, and this is
or nonviolence. I'm sorry.
Nonviolence, very important to me as well. I mean, if anyone's dives into the 8 limbs of yoga, that's and one of the first things that you work on is that nonviolence and peace. And so the fact that we are doing personal transformation before that we're having any external impact, then we're creating that peaceful and nonviolent environment within ourselves, and that then ripples out, like we've said. So to the social change and the impact that we want to have is peaceful and nonviolent.
And then the next one is taking a nonpartisan approach. And this is an important one, especially in the current context of social work. We talked about this on other episodes. I've been a big critic of it, but I should say social work in general, but especially organizations like the NASW, the National Association of Social Workers, has endorsed Biden 4 years ago, and I think it endorsed Biden and then Kamala Harris after. And if you follow their social media or the way that they talk about things, essentially they're just regurgitating the exact same thing as the Democrats, the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. They're regurgitating the exact same talking points without any critical thought, without any pushing them to change or anything like that. And I think the golden example, we talked about health a little bit, but you mentioned the thing in what's going on in Gaza. And I don't have a count right here of the children that have died, but if you take away all the adults, we just talk about the children that have died in that war, or that massacre, or that genocide, however we're choosing to frame it. It's the Democrats right now that are sending the money and the weaponry over there for that to happen. And so to ignore that and to endorse a candidate that has explicitly lied about what's happened over there, explicitly, and confirmed and reassured us that they will continue, under no doubt, to support Israel's right to defend itself by performing offense. Maybe we'll get Rudy Gobert for Offensive Player of the Year. Doesn't really make sense. Anyways, revolutionary social work, it doesn't align with any kind of partisanship. We don't align or affiliate with any major political party or movement in any way, shape, or form. And I would say that's a pretty hard value. And maybe you could even say goes into the principles.
Yeah.
That's not, revolutionary social work cannot be that, or it ceases to have any meaningful impact, period.
Exactly. In order for us to critique and challenge the systems, we have to remain nonpartisan and to have dialogic practices and group spaces with each other. That is crucial. We are not excluding anybody based on political party, right? It's not about that.
Next one is our next value is valuing global perspectives and wisdom. And just a couple things that I can touch on real quick is, in the Western world, oftentimes, with all our science and, American exceptionalism, or whatever you want us to frame or define that as, we think that there's only one right way to do things sometimes, and that's not true. And that's something I've had to learn. And there are many different ways to do things, some all of differing value. And we, as revolutionary social workers, we embrace those global perspectives. I say global just because we want to include everyone. But just to give a few specific examples, talking circles that I learned from indigenous Alaskan Native folks. So we draw on what we've learned there. We draw on many different other indigenous values, indigenous lenses. We go into Africology as far as we have values of Ubuntu, Mat, what else?
I mean, Rastafari
our
life too. I and I consciousness.
Yes, inner divinity aligns very closely with revolutionary social work. Matter of fact, if there are any Rastafarians out there, or people that practice Rastafari, we would love to collaborate and get into a little reasoning sessions and talk story about whatever we need to.
Yeah.
As well as other international, we can learn from, even when you look at European cultures and whatnot. We're often looking from everything to like pagan to it's on the tip of my tongue, to Celtic traditions. We think that there is value and things to learn from everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at. We value those. Advocacy and social justice, that's pretty self-explanatory, and that aligns very closely with what you see in critical social work, decolonization, things like that. Ethical practice and integrity, we don't need to talk too much about that. And continuous learning and adaptation, meaning that, like I said earlier, we may have been learning and studying, and we may know a lot compared to what we used to know, but we also know and understand that we don't know shit. We don't, in the big scheme of things, we don't know much at all. And so we're constantly learning, always admitting that we have the potential to be wrong, willing to put ourselves out there, despite people often being scrutinized and their words taken out of context. But we believe that in order to grow, we've got to be willing to talk and put ourselves out there and be willing to make mistakes. And so we're on a journey of continuous learning and adaptation, which would be our final value.
What does John 9 say? Is it the more that I learn shows the little that I know?
The more that I learn shows the little that I know.
100%, yeah. And so we may look back on this in 5-10 years time and think, wow, how little did we know? But I mean, we're right there with everyone else. We are transforming ourselves internally, revolutionizing ourselves so that we can help others do the same.
Mm-hmm.